Okay, so we're going to have a look at the trigger page in this section. So what we're going to do is just run through the parameters of what's on the screen and what each parameter does. So starting off in the top left, we have the bank and the pattern number. So what we'll do is I'll press the bank button. We can then select a bank between A to H. So it'll be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. And then once we select that, we can then select one of 16 patterns. So bank D, pattern number 1. We can put in our own parameters per pattern. So this is good for if you're playing in a live performance and you have an intro. You can have pattern 1 as your intro, pattern 2 as your verse, pattern 3 as your pre-chorus, pattern 4 as your chorus, and then you can go on to build tracks like that. If you've only got 4 different parts of your track, you could have multiple tracks within a bank. So if, for example, we had track 1 as your intro, verse, pre-chorus, and then chorus, you could then switch between each one of these. So intro could be maybe your outro as well. And then your verse could be obviously your verse 1, 2, 3, whatever, because it's the same. Pre-chorus is the same. And 4, it just depends on what your needs are. But you can have up to 16 patterns within a bank. So all I'm going to do is put in a few steps. And then this button here, we can select how many steps we want within this sequence. We can do that by holding the function and the scale button down. We can then press on a page to go between 16, 32, 48 or 64 steps within this pattern, or we can alternately pick a number between that of whatever we wanted. So you can get some nice, maybe some polyrhythms going or some unsyncopated sort of stuff going on. So I'm just going to leave it at 32 steps. Click on yes to confirm that. Click on this button to go to the next page. You'll notice that it's copied over my triggers that I've put in onto this second page. I'm just going to change this slightly. Maybe like that. Let's just see how it sounds. That's fine for now. So what I'm going to do then is go over to pattern 2. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same, bring this down. If you didn't want to do that, if you did a lot of parameter changes within that, you can go back over to your bank. You could hold down this machine button, click on copy, go back over to your pattern, to your next pattern page or pattern number 2, hold down the synth page and then press paste. That way all these parameters will be what they are. Alternatively as well, if you've noticed, as I hold that down, it shows up what each parameter is. If I hold down the page name and then let go, or you can just tap these encoders and then that also shows you what each one does. So going back to pattern 2, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a simple 4 on the floor in there and then go back to pattern 1. So if we have this playing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it over to pattern 2 now. And you'll notice here where the sequence is. And what you notice there is it started to flash. So in the top right, in the top left hand corner. So if you notice, when I start playing this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the pattern over straight away, and the D01 will start to flash. What that means is this, when this is completed, it will jump over to pattern number 2. So it's going from 01 to 02. So that is the banks and the patterns within the banks. We'll go over to next to how to rename these patterns. So to rename these patterns, what we do is we click on the sound button, go back to the main menu. You notice that you're in the pattern, or it is for the pattern because it's in the top left hand corner pattern. And then these are what we can change. So if we wanted to rename this, we just click on the sound, we click on rename, and then we hold down this function key to delete, or alternatively we can hold down the function key and then we can just overwrite the letters that are there anyway. Intro. And then to save it, we can press the S button, or alternatively if we wanted to add more to it, we just press this key and then we just type adding more. To delete a letter, hold down the function no button, and that's fine for me for now. So I'm just going to save that pattern, and as you noticed, it says intro at the top. So move over to pattern 2. I'll name this as verse. So if I click on the sound button, hit rename, I'm going to delete all these letters and then null function and then verse. Oops. So what I did then was, I didn't mean to do it, but if you just hold down up or down, it goes through the alphabet, and hold down, it goes through the alphabet. But I have always done it holding function, and then that. It's just, for me, it's just quicker. And then yes to save, and then you'll notice now each pattern is labelled its own name. So verse 1, intro. Next up, we've got the BPM, which is in the top right. You will see 120, and then the verse 1 is also 120. What we can do is we can shape or change, not shape, but change the tempo between each patterns. And how we do that is we select a pattern. So let's say the intro. We will select that, and what you'll have is two different settings. You'll have a global tempo or a pattern tempo. So pattern, we'll look at now. So this means this pattern has its own unique swing and BPM, whereas global, so the pattern has its own swing, but the tempo is global. So that if we've got a song that's 120 BPM, let's say, all these patterns, if they're set to this, all these patterns will play the same tempo. But let's say his intro tempo is different to our verse tempo. So how we do that is we set that to pattern, we slow this tempo down to what we want it to be, which is, let's say, 95 beats per minute. We can create his own swing as well, so whatever we want, and then press yes. And then we'll go over to the verse 1, and let's say we want this to be 120. Oh, in fact, no. 115. So again, select the pattern, choose a swing, whatever we want to do, click yes. And then if I switch between these two patterns, you will notice their change in tempo. That one's 95 and that one is 115. So let's just play that through. And it's changed its tempo. So next up, we'll have a look at the note or trigger note. So the trigger note, this sets the pitch of the note when triggered. If you're recording live, then the mode in the keyboard mode will override that note. So what this means is if we are playing live and we have set that, let's say we've set it to C5. If we go to keyboard mode, which we can do this by pressing function and then track, what it does then is it gives us a chromatic keyboard. So then we can use the keyboard to play the pitch. So this mode overwrites this. So no matter what I do, it overrides it. So come out of that again, we just press that on the track. We can also alter the pitch, obviously by going into the actual machine and messing around with the pitch. But that is what that's for. It's like a root note of where you want to start. Next up is the velocity. The velocity, this sets the velocity of the sequencer triggered note. So as you can tell, it's getting a lot quieter, that's getting a lot stronger. So that's good for, it's making it more human feel. So what I'll do is just put a 4 on the floor. And then what I want to do now is to use this velocity to change in each one of these notes. So on this one, I want it quite hard. On this one, let's take it down up to 90. Let's go extreme so you can hear what it's doing. Let's go 75, and then this one 83, and then this one 90, and then this one we will go to, well, we'll go down to 40. So let's just hear that. Let's do it more extreme. So you can hear what it's doing, and these are called parameter locks. So when you do this, you can change any parameter, what is up here, and you can change it per trigger. So these are called triggers. If I hold that down, we can change any of this. So if I had it on infinite, it would hold out an infinite until the next trigger is played. Or alternatively, because it's a 16-step sequencer, we could hold that on for 1/4, and then that'll end there. But you're not going to notice because we need to put this up to, that's the decay into it. We will come down here, go across, hold time. That way you'll be able to. So what I did then, just to slow things down, is I've entered my trigger notes. I've then gone into this number 9, and what I've wanted to do is to hold this note over 4 steps. Because this is a 16-step sequencer, each one of these is 1/16. So 1/4 is this. So a quarter of a 16th. So what I did then was, because it is doing what it's doing, but because I've not got my amplitude on hold note the whole time, so what that means is when I press this down, it will sustain the note until I let go. Alternatively, we can set that to a time, or we can have it as 0. So what I did is just went on to that, so it holds the note down. And then same on this, we just shape the sound, shape the decay after the note is released. And then that's the decay. And now the probability. So the probability is how much of a chance it is going to be when you press the trigger. So what I'm going to do is just going to put 4 on the floor, 100%. If I hold all these down and then go to 0% or 1%, it's got a 1% chance that these are going to play when it passes through. Which is next to nothing. It's like it's not going to do it. So all we can do is just hold this up, or if I go to 100, it'll play 100% of the time. If I hold these down to go 50, it's got a 50% chance in playing. But these don't have to be the same. You can have this one at, let's say, 100%, this one at 50, this one at 75, and then that one again at 67. So moving on to probability. Probability of a trigger has different parameters in there. So let's just run through them. I won't run through these in great detail. I'm just going to briefly skim over them. So what we've got is fill, not fill, pre, not pre, NEI, not NEI, first, not first, and then 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 1, 3, goes all the way up to 8 8s, which is just crazy. So for example, if we go onto this and it's not fill, what will happen is it will play, but when I hold this fill button down, it won't play. And then, oops, go back onto that. If it's fill, it'll play. It won't play until I press this button. So you can get a lot of variety. You can do like build-ups and stuff like that. Let's say a drum, a snare drum, things like that with that. Moving on, not pre, NEI, first stuff. Let's say first, for example. First means it'll play it first and then it won't play it after. So the first time through the sequence. So for example, if I did this and I had 1, 10 and 6 on first, it would play through and hit them notes, and then the next time on through the sequence it wouldn't. Until that sequence starts again. And then what we have then is we have these numbers. So what these numbers mean is this is going to play, so the number 3 means how many times through the sequences it's going, and the number 1 is it's going to be played within the first time it goes through. So for example, if this is on a 1, 2, so the first time through the sequence it will be played, but the second time it won't be played. So let's just delete these. Plays, and now it won't play. And then it'll play again. And now it won't play. And then we can do this by doing that. So if it'll play now, and then it won't play through 2 steps. And it'll play again. And then that's what that means. But to brush over all these is just, especially these take a lot of explaining, which I will probably do, but I'll have to do a separate video on them. So to get out of a trigger, if we've got a trigger here, all we have to do is click, push in the encoder to delete that trigger or that parameter lock. So the other 2 parameters that we have now is the LFO trigger and the filter trigger. So the filter trigger controls the filter envelope, if it will be triggered or not. And then the LFO trigger controls the LFO, if that will be triggered or not. So the filter trigger, which is this page, and then the LFO, which is this page, which we'll look at in another video, that just controls in parameters if they're going to be triggered or not. The other 2 things which is left to just explain on the trigger page is the track, which is basically what track you're on. So a track is what sound you're on. So you've got a kick, snare, clap, cymbal, analog kick, VCO, and then that just denotes what track is selected. So if you've got a clap and you're in the song but you want to get through to a hi-hat, then all you do is press track and then you go over to your hi-hat. What you can do then is you can alter the levels of each track by using this button here, just to get the mix right. You can use it via that, or you can go to the amp page and use the volume button on this side on the amp page. To reset these, if you hold the function down and then you turn it, it will set it back to its default value. Not that one though. So that is basically the trigger page within the syntakt.